Welcome to this week's edition of Tech Sales Advice. My name is Chris White, of course, your host. And this is the LinkedIn live show for pre-sales professionals and pre-sales leaders. And allow me to emphasize, folks, this is live. By design, these conversations are unscripted, unrehearsed, and unpredictable. I am delighted to welcome this week's guest. He actually happens to be a former colleague of mine, and this is the first time I've actually had a former colleague. So, Paul, you're setting a new bar, Mr. Paul Lewis. He is the digital sales leader. We're going to leave it at that of Pitney Bowes, and we're gonna dig into that, Paul. But for starters, welcome, sir. How are you doing, my friend?
I am very well, Chris. Thank you. It's great to be here. Great to join you.
Well, and it's, I'm just sitting here thinking, I mean, you and I probably saw each other face to face. I'm going to say it's been at least 6 years, maybe 5 or 6 years ago. Yeah, right.
Gotta be.
London, like if somebody had said to us, in about 6 years, you guys are going to reconnect and have a conversation on LinkedIn, you're both going to be in totally new places in your careers. I think you and I both would sort of, roll our eyes and scratch our heads a little bit. But here we are.
Absolutely.
And it's really a delight to see you again, Paul. And the reason, and you know this, but I'll share with the audience, the reason I was inspired to reach out to Paul probably, 4 or 5 months ago, is I saw in my LinkedIn feed that he had been recognized and honored by LinkedIn as a community champion in the LinkedIn Sales Navigator community. And so, of course, I was, very pleased to see my former colleague doing so well. And I was inspired to reach out, and we reconnected, and he agreed to join. So, Paul, let's open with a few questions. For starters, there may be some folks with us. And incidentally, folks, we don't know if you're there. So if you're out there and you want to say hello, by all means, please chime in and say hello. If you have any questions for myself or Paul, please ask. Paul, do you mind just taking a minute and introducing yourself a little bit more properly and a little bit more broadly?
Yeah, absolutely. So bit of background. Always kind of worked in sort of, let's say, a marketing or sales enablement capacity. Specifically, I would say within the technology sector. So a whole series of companies that I've served fairly long tenures with, and obviously go check out my LinkedIn profile. You'll see that career history there. But for the the past 9.5, I mean, this is coming up now for my 10th year. I've been with Pitney Bowes, served in a few different roles over that time, but most recently anyway, running the what's become known as the social selling program at PB.
So you've been there almost a decade.
Yes.
Oh, for crying out loud! And you and I probably haven't seen each other for 12 years. Then, good Lord, I didn't realize it had been that long. You haven't aged, by the way. So maybe that's it. You don't look any different than the last time we hung out together. And remind me, what's the little town just north of London where the office used to be there?
So our former office, we were based in Watford, which
Watford,
is in Hertfordshire.
That's it. Why? How could I forget that? Watford Station, of course.
Yes,
that's right. So and it's funny because when you and I work together, I mean, let's be fair. I mean, LinkedIn certainly had been around, but LinkedIn by no means had sort of the presence in the B2B business world that it does today, and really social selling, I don't think really had a presence that it does today. What has been your journey that sort of led you more into really becoming a social selling expert?
That's a good question. I think really it kind of began when I first started at Pitney Bowes, and at the time we were looking for alternative ways to try and start generating sales opportunities. Um, and that was the time whereby I, I was kind of getting into social media, whether that was, Twitter or Facebook or LinkedIn. And obviously, LinkedIn being, the world's largest professional B2B network, that's where I gravitated towards. So I started hanging out there, and I thought to myself, look, there's got to be a way that I can, start to use this platform more than just sort of building a network of connections.
Yeah.
And I think the trigger kind of moment really was I was at a sales kickoff, and we had a customer who was up on stage as part of a panel discussion. And I recall he started to talk about how we use LinkedIn, and he stated that he started and ended his day logging into the platform. And I kind of thought to myself, well, I think this the customer was like a chief technology officer, and I thought to myself, well, here's a CTO that's starting and ending his day on LinkedIn. There's got to
Yeah.
be lots of other people,
Yeah.
just like that.
Yeah.
And that's really kind of what got the ball rolling.
Yeah. Yeah. And when you started engaging more, were there some trepidations that you had? Were there some maybe some you know fears or concerns of maybe putting too much or putting the wrong sorts of material out in the ether, as we like to, out in the universe?
There was a lot of fear. There was a lot of trepidation. There were a lot of people to begin with at Pitney Bowes that kind of said, "This isn't for us."
Hmm.
I had to kind of find that, senior exec that would serve as kind of like let's call them the project sponsor in order for me to be able to move this forward. Um, and and to be honest with you, Chris, I still do this today when I'm kind of bringing on board somebody new to the program. One of the first things that I'll say, up front is, I am not here to try and, make you into being a LinkedIn guru or a social media expert. Far from that. I'm
Hmm.
really just trying to show you how you can leverage these platforms as a sales enablement tool.
Yeah. Yeah. And you mentioned program when you bring people into the program. Could you elaborate a little bit on what that program is? Do you all do, or do you run some sort of onboarding program or some sort of social selling program there at Pitney Bowes?
Yeah, so there's a structured program. I've got a methodology that I work to. So first and foremost, it all starts off with building the individual's LinkedIn profile and helping
Mm.
to position them as being that subject matter expert, positioning them as being that thought leader and helping to build their credibility. Then there's kind of like a 5-stage process from there, in terms of carrying out research and prospecting activities. And then once you've identified the individuals that you're attempting to engage with, that's when we try and kickstart that process of engagement. And all of that is then underpinned as well by the need to start posting content on a regular basis, not just on LinkedIn, but other social networks as well. To once again, showcase your expertise within your said domain.
Yeah. I think a lot of sales engineers think of prospecting and just using the social media, right? I mean, here we are talking on LinkedIn, obviously, but to your point, it applies to other social media venues and outlets. I think a lot of sales engineers think of that more as the account executive's job or the account executive's role, and not necessarily their role. So, do you include sales engineers in your program as well? And is there specific advice you give to them that maybe differs from the account executives?
Yeah. Again, coming back, Chris, to what you were saying, I think a lot of people have this kind of connotation that social selling, is really designed for, let's say, the field sales, the account managers, and somebody working, let's say, in business development.
Yeah.
Um, and yes, that's exactly who I started with, and that's exactly who I'm working with today. However, there are other individuals now that are coming into the picture, whether that's pre-sales engineers, whether that's inside sales, even through to people working in a customer success capacity. So I wouldn't necessarily say that social selling is specific only to those people that are direct sellers. I think that it can be used regardless of the role that you're in.
Yeah. Yeah. This is a question that I sincerely have for myself. Hopefully, some of the folks who are listening or catch this can benefit from it as well. But something that I struggle with myself, honestly, Paul, is how often to post. There are. I think I'm almost reluctant to post too much. But then I've heard people say, honestly, they've said a couple things. Like, first of all, if it's good stuff, the more you post, the better. Number one, and number two, it seems like, and you can help our audience maybe understand, it seems like things just scroll so quickly that even if you're posting a lot of people may not see most of what you're posting anyway. So do you give any advice on how frequently to create content and post, etc.?
Again, I mean, it's a great question, Chris, and it really does come down to as well the social networks that you're focusing on.
Mm,
I would think that the majority of people, that are joining today's session anyway, are going to be predominantly focused on LinkedIn. There might be some though that want to post, on Instagram or Twitter or whatever. Obviously, Twitter, for example, it's such a fast moving platform that no sooner have you posted your tweet, it's gone from the top of the page, off the bottom, and that's
yeah.
it.
Yeah.
So the frequency, obviously, that you want to post onto somewhere like Twitter is going to be higher than with LinkedIn. Um, are there any kind of golden rules? I would say, if you can post content maybe 2 to 3 times a week, and at least that is kind of going to get your name out there. It's going to increase your visibility. I think it's more a case though of not really how much you post, but what you post. So it comes
Mm,
down, it comes down to, I mean, how many times have we spoken about quality rather than quantity?
yeah.
And you really don't want to be too self-promotional. So
Mm,
that healthy mix of content. I mean, there's a I mean, you can just Google this anyway, but there's a few kind of rules out there. There's like the 4-1-1 rule, which is for every 6 posts that you put out, 4 should sort of be engaging, 1 should be, let's call it, a soft sell, and then 1 could be more of a harder sell.
mm,
But I really do try to encourage people to sort of post that healthy mix of content. And again, if you're posting that content that shows that you've got your finger on the pulse, what's going on within your industry, what's going on, let's say, within the sales engineering domain, that's what you're really going to be looking to do. That's what's
yeah.
going to help position you as that thought leader.
Yeah. Yeah. Incidentally, Paul, we have a question from John Spooner. John, it's good to see you. He actually had the opportunity to sit through one of my workshops earlier this year. His question: how do you measure the impact of posting? Knowing the impact will help quantify the quality. So I'm actually interested to hear your response as well, because you could, there's views, but my perception is like basically if it just scrolls through somebody's sort of window, that counts as a view, whether they looked at it or not. Do you have any metrics that you use?
So the views or the impressions, I personally, I wouldn't, place too much sort of focus on that. What's more important is those individuals that are actually engaging with your post. So whether that's somebody who's, kind of giving it a thumbs up, a like, whether it's somebody that's sharing it, or more importantly, if somebody has commented on your post. What
Yeah.
I would say is, any post that you do push out, for anyone that obviously comments, please make sure that you respond to that individual, and that you get that dialogue going, because you never know where it could lead to. And
Absolutely.
likewise, anybody that's engaged with the post, it's a good idea to go check out who they are, look at their LinkedIn profile. If you think that it's somebody that could be of value to you, if you think it's somebody that you would like to potentially add to your LinkedIn network, send them a personalized connection request on LinkedIn. um and when you personalize that message, that connection request, highlight the fact that, I noticed you recently engaged with my post that, discussed, the latest insights on, whatever it may be. So that's really what I would say you should sort of focus on in terms of, the performance of your posts.
Yeah. Yeah. Good, John. Good question. It's good to see you pop up, and good advice from you, Paul. Paul, there's actually another question I'm inspired to share as well, from Rupesh. Rupesh, nice to see you as well. I think the question is around LinkedIn article as a good option for maybe blogging about technology, or are there other options? Do you have an opinion about the right way, maybe to for example, maybe you want to write an article, and in fact I'm working on a white paper right now. This would be a good question for you to respond. Should I write a blog post on my website, and then create a link on LinkedIn that points to my website? Should I create an article on LinkedIn, and what's the advantage of one over the other?
I would say so. So let's take your case, Chris, here for the example. So you've got this white paper. You'll produce this white paper. You'll have it hosted on your website. Maybe the idea would be, write a blog which is a synopsis of that white paper, publish, obviously embed links into that article, some of which will link through to the white paper that's hosted, on your website. The other thing
Hmm.
that you might want to do is, depending upon, the length of your white paper, you might want to sort of chunk it, break it into chunks, and then you've got a series of posts, maybe, over 6 weeks or so. Obviously, I'm not suggesting that you just completely replicate the white paper by just, posting that directly onto LinkedIn. Give some more value here. Highlight what each section of that white paper is focusing on, and then the call to action is, if you want more insight and information on the topic of
Hmm.
conversation here, click through to my website, whereby you can access the white paper.
Yeah,
So that's, I'd really suggest doing that.
I like that.
And and for you, Chris, you've got a starting point here, because you've got the white paper. There'll be a lot of people that will kind of sit there and think, okay, I've got to publish an article on LinkedIn,
Hmm.
but I don't know what to do. I don't know where to start. I don't know what to talk about. So where do I go from here?
Hmm. And what do you?
Focus focus on something that maybe it's a news story.
Mm,
Focus on something that is of interest to you. Don't necessarily
mm,
focus on talking about a particular product or a tool. That just makes you an expert in a certain product. You don't really want to be known as an expert necessarily in one product. You want to be known as an expert in your field. So you take a topic, you speak about that. It's your view, your opinion, but you know ideally what you're trying to do here is to get people to engage with it and comment on it and give their viewpoint as well. And again, it comes back to what I was saying earlier on about opening up that dialogue.
yeah, yeah. No, I absolutely love that. And it's funny, Paul, and I'm curious to see how you respond to this, because I do think there's a lot of people that are probably, might even be listening to us now or after the fact, who have some good ideas, or at least some things that they think are potentially some good ideas, and they have an inclination to want to put it out there, but yet fear gets in the way. It's a little bit scary to put yourself out there, because some people are going to
Absolutely.
agree with you, some people aren't going to agree with you. But I've got to tell you this story. A few of the posts that I've put, let's say in the past 2 or 3 years, are posts that honestly, I think it took me about 20 minutes to actually click the submit button before I, or the send button before I did. And invariably those are some of the posts that have gotten the most attention. So what would you say to those people that are struggling to get over that fear of maybe failure, fear of putting themselves out there? Do you have any advice for those people?
Really, I would say, go for it. I fully appreciate the fact that, some people might think, you know, should I be doing this? Do I need to seek, internal approval from,
Mm,
marketing or legal or somebody like that, that I work at before I hit that, publish button. Obviously, if you are writing something that does refer to, the organization that you work for, then anyway is put a line at the bottom, which is just a disclaimer stating that you're an employee of that company, but you just want to put thoughts and opinions are my own. But ultimately steer away from talking to your company, and talk about a subject matter
yeah.
that is going to appeal to to a wider audience. And what you say, you're never going to have 100% of the people agree with everything.
Mm.
Life would be incredibly boring if that were the case. Now, and please don't think please don't think in any way I'm trying to sort of stir things up by by saying to people, yeah, you should be a little bit controversial. But put your viewpoints forward, but ask people, to comment, in the comment section below.
Yeah.
Let me know what you think on this. I've done it before, whereby the comments, the feedback that you get, it's user generated content. You can actually take those comments
Mm,
and work that into your next post.
mm,
So there's so much that you can do.
yeah.
So don't be afraid.
Yeah.
Craft that article, that blog. Obviously check it over, but yeah, hit the publish button. And then when you come to do it the second time, it'll be easier.
Yeah.
And then so on and so forth.
Yeah, no, that's great. That's great advice. Be not afraid. And look, I mean, as someone who posts not all that often, I mean, I try to post at least once a week. I can assure the folks out there that every time I do so, I still, have those, those butterflies, and I'm always a little, still a little uncomfortable with some of the things that I put. I'm like, well, I'm not sure how well this is going to go over, but to your point, you just got to put yourself out there. Paul, let me push our own pause button, folks. I'm speaking with Paul Lewis. He is the digital sales leader with Pitney Bowes. He is a social selling expert. Was recently named a community champion within the Sales Navigator, the LinkedIn Sales Navigator, sales selling community. And actually, Paul, I've been meaning to ask you, when I saw that you were with Pitney Bowes, that caught me by surprise, because when I think of Pitney Bowes, I don't necessarily think of technology and software. So do you mind just talking a little bit about sort of some of the selling motions that your teams, are involved in, and who it is that your teams are selling to?
Absolutely. So again, Chris, like you say, for the majority of people, if you mention the name Pitney Bowes, the first thing that probably springs to mind is mailing equipment or a postage meter, which is still a big part of our business.
Yeah.
That's where our we're synonymous with that, but we've diversified, over the years. So now, big focus around shipping, parcel shipping, big focus around e-commerce logistics. So fulfillment, delivery, returns, cross-border solutions. So a lot of technology behind that. Pitney Bowes is what are we now? 103 years old, I believe we are.
Amazing.
The company has changed a lot over those years, especially I would say in the last 10 years that I've been with the organization.
Yeah. Yeah. And is the sales engineer role, is that an important, role in the go-to-market team and the selling team?
Yeah, sales engineers. I mean, I'm anyone that's got, let's call it, the word sales in their job title, I'm pretty much working with field sales, pre-sales, sales engineers, inside sales, and then obviously, like I mentioned earlier, customer success, account executives. But anyone that's let's say customer facing or quota carrying is who I'm working with.
Yeah, yeah. And we were talking earlier about the importance of the sales engineers in particular to build their personal brand and promote themselves as thought leaders. Can you talk a little bit more about some of the specific advice you give your sales engineers around doing just that?
Yeah, I mean, again, Chris, as I kind of mentioned, Pitney Bowes has transformed itself, and innovation is a huge part of our business, and a lot of behind that information obviously are the engineers, the sales engineers. So it really is a case of me working closely with them, building out their LinkedIn profiles, and at the same time, obviously, if they have a presence on other social media networks that that they have a focus on. I've that yes, they hang out on LinkedIn, but there's also another big B2B social media network in Germany called Zing, and from time to time they might ask for my assistance, on that front as well. So it is a case, like I say, of helping them to build their personal and professional brands, but at the same time, helping them to position themselves as being, the subject matter experts, building their credibility credibility, ensuring that their LinkedIn profiles are optimized so that, if anyone's carrying out searches on LinkedIn or even Google for that matter, that when the search results come up, whatever the keyword string is that individual may have typed in, that person's LinkedIn profile is going to appear.
Yeah.
So there's there's a lot of work that goes on with the engineers, and all of that not only help their credibility and position themselves as the thought leaders, but it also helps to showcase the innovation at Pitney Bowes.
Do you provide them with content that they can use or should use to post or promote, or do you provide guidelines?
I'll give them the guidelines, but from time to time I do kind of go above and beyond. And yes, I will have content that I'll pull together. So third-party content that I think would be relevant for them to post out. I'll send that across to them. And I'll say to them, obviously, they should check this beforehand. But if they're in agreement with me, here's use. But then I'll also educate them as well on how you can go out there and find the content. There are plenty of news aggregation services that you can use. I mean, I tend to use one called Feedly. But there's probably hundreds of others out there. And more importantly, if you haven't done so already, set up Google Alerts. Have Google fire off to you, either on a daily basis or a weekly basis, whatever frequency you wish. An email with content that relates to specific keywords that you've highlighted. So kind of let Google do the work for you, and have it push that content to you. It's probably the easiest and quickest way, to start finding that content. And really, if you're just going to post it on LinkedIn, all you're going to need to do is have a quick read over that article and then write one line of text as kind of the lead into to whatever that article may be, and post it. It's not difficult. It really isn't difficult. It takes a little time, that's all.
Yeah.
But if you can carve out, let's say 15 minutes a week, or 5 minutes a day or something like that, it's easy.
Yeah. No, you've just given me a brilliant idea. I don't know why I hadn't thought of that myself. So just set up a Google alert on a couple of keywords, and then I'll get articles in my inbox that I can just read through, pick one, post. And then now you also mentioned Feedly. Is that Feedly? Okay.
Fee, yeah, Fee. It's I mean, you can use the free. I just use the free version. Obviously there's a paid for subscription as well. Really easy to use. Various different categories on there that you can select from. And it's simply just an aggregation service. Log on once a day, once a week, or whatever. All the information's right there in front of you. So
fantastic. I did not know about Feedly, and I'm going to start using it. So you're making me better. If nobody else, you're helping me, which I'm more than happy to take. What advice would you give to other individuals in your role who are tasked with enabling their sales teams, in social selling, that maybe are struggling to get their sales teams, the individuals, to get a little bit more engaged in the social media? Do you ever run into difficulty sort of getting people involved? And if so, what have you done, and what advice would you give to other people in your role?
there's those who are the naysayers. There are those who, social media, to some individuals is just something that, they're scared of.
Mm,
You know, they're scared. I mean, you do hear these stories, don't you, Chris, of somebody posting the wrong thing, and it going viral, and the next thing it's just caused a huge problem for the individual, and possibly
mm,
for the company that they work for. You know, I try to allay those concerns that anybody may have. And if need be, we'll start from the basics. We'll kind of do LinkedIn 101,
yeah,
and start off by simply, I mean, Chris, I've even worked with people before who they've expressed an interest, and when I've said to them, okay, I tell you what, let's start off by taking a look at your LinkedIn profile, and then
yeah.
they've come back to me to say, actually, I don't have one. So we start from scratch, and
Yeah,
that's perfectly okay.
yeah,
Everybody's got to start somewhere. Um,
indeed.
so, I will start from scratch with them, and slowly but surely over the days and the weeks, we'll build things up, and they'll become, a little more confident, and there'll be, so to speak, less hand holding involved. But the thing is, Chris, is that for a lot of these individuals that are, hesitant, I mean, I can fire off lots of stats to them, but I think the one that hits home, and I use this frequently, there was I think it was a PwC paper that was published a few years back that said, I think it was by 2021, 50% of the global workforce will be composed of millennials. And these
Mm,
obviously are the folks that, they're spending pretty much all day, using iPhones. They've got a completely different way of going about engaging.
yeah.
They're not interested in making calls anymore. They're not reading emails. It's instant messaging. It's social
Mm,
networks, that that's where they gravitate towards. Given the fact that these are the individuals that are coming into the marketplace, you've got to change your mindset, because if you don't, you are going to get left behind.
yeah, yeah. No, and honestly, that's a good reminder for me, Paul. I mean, I forget that the it's not people our age, and I'm putting you and I probably in about the same age bucket, that really are making up the workplace. And when you were sharing that, the question that came to mind, and I know there have been statistics around the use of pictures and videos and short text and that sort of thing. But from your experience, have you discovered anything that seems to work best for you, whether that's maybe posting a short video, or linking an article or something of that nature? Or do you just tend to mix it up, in general?
I tend to mix it up in general, but again, I would say speak from the heart, talk about
Mm,
your experiences, and ultimately, you've got to think that whatever it is that you're posting, it needs to have or provide, let's say, a value to
mm,
your audience. So uh, there's kind of no point in in just going out there and just posting content after content after or article after article after article. You really
mm.
do need that article to to provide value to to the individual, to your audience. um so again, Chris, one of the things that I think it was one of the questions that you posed earlier on, and I'm guilty of this myself. Okay, we're all here. We're all on LinkedIn. We've all got links. We've all spent time. whether that's days, months, weeks, or years, building these networks. If I go back to, let's say 10 years ago, I'd be going along, let's say, to an industry event, a conference, during a coffee break, during lunch, I'd exchange business cards with somebody.
Yeah.
And, by the end of the day, I might have amassed, let's say 20, 30 business cards, whatever. Okay. What did I do with those business cards? I go straight back to the office. I take those cards, I put them into to the top drawer of my desk, and I'd never look at them again. And, you think, what was the point in me going, and collecting those business cards and, networking with these individuals if I'm not going to do anything with, the contact information that they've provided me? It's the same thing on LinkedIn. If you're going to take the time to build that network, put it to work, engage with the individuals that you have connected with, drop them messages every, from time to time. If you're that sales engineer and you're working on a particular project, maybe reach out to some of the other sales engineers that you're already connected to on LinkedIn. You might want to pose a question to them and ask them, I've got this problem. Have you ever encountered something like this, and how did you overcome it? So it's kind of really putting your network to work.
Yeah. Yeah. Well, and Paul, as you were speaking, something occurred to me that I think I even forget from time to time, and that is, and you use the word value. At the end of the day, when we're posting, we need to be thinking more in terms of let's just say the audience, right? But we need to be thinking in terms of this is not about us. This is about them, right? It's not about us getting a certain number of reactions or views or comments, right? This is not to boost our own, sort of self-image or ego or anything like that, right? This is about just adding value to our network, right? And the more we have the attitude of, look, I'm just here to provide insightful thoughts or maybe encouraging words, or maybe a position that some may either agree with or disagree with, but I'm stirring up a conversation. I think the more we focus on the audience and the network and how we can add value, I think the easier it is to put yourself out there, and the more likely that you're actually going to build your brand and your network. Does that for, I don't know why that's so solidified with me in that moment, but something you said just triggered when you use the word value. It's just like giving a demo. Like, it needs to be all about them, not us. Does that resonate with you?
So here's the thing, Chris. Okay, when you've run, and I'm going to assume this applies to a lot of people on today's broadcast. If you're running a demo, you bring somebody through a or a solution. It's the same thing. Tell a story here. Chris, how many over the years? How many RFPs have you responded to, or demos have you given, or proposal documents have you put forward? The whole idea here is to try and give it that spin. Build a story around it, convey, what's unique about, you or your organization, what makes you stand out from the crowd. It's exactly the same thing when it comes to crafting the LinkedIn posts. And, I kind of like to think that, those people that are working in pre-sales kind of have that head start over the business development reps and the field sales managers, for example. They're the ones that aren't used to writing this type of content, right. But pre-sales are. So you've kind of got that head start over them.
Yeah. No, I absolutely love it. By the way, Sean Myers responded to your comment, putting your network to work. Great insight, Sean. It's good to see you. Thanks for the comment. Paul, if you can believe it, we've already been at this for 45 minutes. I feel like we've just gotten started. I do have a little lightning round of questions that I like to close these conversations out with. But before we get to that, anything that maybe you were hoping we would touch on or cover, just sort of around this conversation of either the social selling, building your personal brand, really delivering value to your network on the regular. Anything else that you were inspired to sort of touch on and share as you reflect on this?
I think Chris, we've covered a lot today anyway. The one thing that I would probably highlight, if I didn't say so already, is the fact, and it comes back to your LinkedIn profile, your professional brand. Bear in mind that any kind of activity that you carry out on LinkedIn is likely to result in somebody clicking through to view your LinkedIn profile. So you need to make sure that you have built out your profile, okay, to the best of your ability, and that you're showcasing, exactly who you are, what you do, your expertise. That way you're giving more information to anyone that's visiting you. So keep that one in mind. And I'd probably say, as a caveat to that as well, ensure that you update your profile on a regular basis. So from time to time, go in, maybe change some of the wording that's on there. Add a background image to your profile page. Upload some, maybe if you've delivered a presentation that you're able to, sort of showcase in the public domain, upload that to your LinkedIn profile. Much the same way, Chris, no doubt, the recordings of these sessions you're probably putting on your LinkedIn profile as well. Build up that sort of showcase portfolio. Keep that profile fresh and updated. People will keep returning to it.
Yeah. No, as I've said a couple of times, Paul, I have to admit that's a good reminder to me. I don't know if I've actually updated mine probably in a couple of years. So I'm as at the moment you said that, it made me realize that I probably have a lot of people going to my profile, and I haven't actually considered what I probably have not really considered what it says in a couple of years. So I may have to go and do an update. So this has really been insightful and helpful for me a great deal. So I mentioned this lightning round of questions. So it's 3 questions. So I call this show Tech Sales Advice. And so the first question is around advice. In particular, as you reflect on your career, is there any advice that you got in particular that really stuck with you throughout your career or made a significant difference for you in your career?
That's a really good question. Wow. And this is supposed to be a quick fire question. What can I say to that? I mean, look, I've had so much advice, given to me over the years anyway. But I think the one that probably sticks in my mind with everything that I do is, whatever it is that I'm doing, just keep telling yourself constantly who the end user is. Who's going to be looking at this. That way you're not going to kind of go off at a tangent here. You kind of keep in your mind exactly who it is that you're speaking to, and you stay on target, you stay on track.
I absolutely love that. And it's particularly valuable, not only certainly for sales engineers, but really anyone who's thinking about particularly getting more active on any social media, right? To your point, consider, you use the word end user, the term end consumer or information consumer came to mind as well, right? And it keeps us, to your point, it keeps us in line with the audience. And Lord knows I have a a tendency to stray sometimes. My mind can meander a lot. So that's actually a good reminder for myself. And honestly, know your audience, right? Like know your audience. That's very good advice. All right. Question number 2. We're going to turn the tables. We're sticking with advice. We're going to turn the tables. Let's just say, for example, someone has just walked on an elevator with you and they turn to you and say, Paul, oh my goodness, I just saw you on LinkedIn Live the other day and I've just started my career as a sales engineer. Any advice you care to give me? And you've got about 20 floors to give a few words of advice.
Few words of advice. Build out your LinkedIn profile, keep that fresh, keep that up to date. Start posting a healthy mix of content on LinkedIn. Weight that healthy mix towards the third-party content. Throw in maybe one or two that relate back to your company. Those are kind of the fundamentals here if you want to get started on that social selling route.
Journey. I love it. And I have to admit, another takeaway for me is this notion of the third-party content. I'm realizing that I don't leverage third-party content nearly enough. So again, this has almost been like Chris's private, social selling lesson at everyone else's expense. Hopefully some other people have picked up a few good thoughts as well. All right. Third and final question in the LinkedIn round. If you could ask me one question, what might it be?
Whoa, good question. I would say, Chris, staying on subject here. How would you position social media as being an intrinsic part to a sales engineer's role? So how would you kind of sell the notion of using social media into to a sales engineer?
Yeah, really good question. There's 2 things that come to mind immediately. The first is, and we touched on this a moment ago, but one of our primary roles as a sales engineer is delivering technical presentations, demonstrations, running POCs with a prospect or with a group, within a prospective organization. And LinkedIn is the easiest way to find out who your audience is and to find out who it is that you're presenting to and demonstrating to and for, what their background is, what their history is, what some of their interests might be. So first and foremost, one of the things that I tell all the folks that I work with, before every single meeting, you should be doing some homework and some research on the people you're actually meeting with and presenting to. Period. End of story. That's number one. And that one seems so basic and so simple, but I think sales engineers just forget that that's actually part of their job. That's number one.
Exactly.
Right. I assume that that's part of what you share, with the folks that you work with, right? Anyway, there's the second thing that comes to mind, Paul, is sort of what you and I were talking about is using the platform to build our professional brands, our personal brands, and position ourselves as thought leaders. Our customers and frankly our sales counterparts are looking to us to show up and be the trusted advisor, right? To be that thought leader. By putting ourselves out there, we can position ourselves as the thought leader, building that much more credibility with the people that we're selling to and the people that we're calling on. So that's the second thought that comes to me. So both using it for knowledge gathering as well as building up our position within the industry.
Absolutely.
So,
No, completely agree with that. That's great advice. Thank you for sharing that, Chris.
well, good question, my friend. Paul, so good to see you. Thank you so much for being here. Any closing words before we put a bow on this conversation?
Just to say, stay active on LinkedIn. Keep posting that healthy mix of content. Look at your profile, and ultimately, let me close by saying this: if you're carrying out a sales demo, immediately after that sales demo, if you haven't done so already, come onto LinkedIn, look up the individuals that you've just presented to, send them a connection request, personalize that connection request, and even work in, sort of a little follow-up message to say, it was great speaking with you today, and I look to reconnecting with you, next week or in 2 weeks' time. Just make sure that, that you're connecting with these individuals and that you're building that network.
Love it. Fantastic advice. Paul, really good to see you, my friend. Thank you so much for being here. For those of you who joined, thank you so much. Appreciate all the comments. For any of you who may have listened to the recording, thanks for hanging around. My colleagues always get mad at me when I don't at least say a word or two about our website and some of the things that we're doing. If you like these and want to follow along, check out. If you follow #TechSalesAdvice, you can get alerted to these conversations. You can always go to demodoctor.com to get access to some online training. And of course, techsalesadvisors.com is where you can find some more information about us. I always forget to say that at the end of these, Paul, so I'm trying to get better about doing that. Paul, hang around just for a minute because you're going to get your parting gift. Everyone else, thank you so much for joining. I'll see you next week. Thanks so much, all.